Alright, the next thing we're going to try and do is we're going to disassemble the inside of the tank. We're going to pull the insides out, and first we're going to remove this top cover so we can get to the inside, and then we'll pull the top out so we can illustrate all the parts inside the unit. Let me reposition this thing so that we can get a better picture of the inside. Okay, first thing we want to do is we want to remove the tubes and the tank from the front. This is accomplished by removing these clear plastic tubes, and we'll take this tube out of the top of the tank, and that comes right out. Okay, from there we want to take loose the copper lines. We want to remove this line at this point and this line at this point. Back here you want to be sure to hold the valve so that you don't twist that loose. This is just a compression fitting, and it's going to come loose right like this. And then at the front we want to do same thing. I'm going to take that one loose. These are just compression fittings. I have a small 6-inch compression wrench for that, and those lines are loose. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to take a socket. I've got a small 1/4 inch. We want to take these two nuts loose. Which holds down the top of the tank. There's a bar that goes across the front. Just going to loosen one side, the other side comes right out. That way you don't have to take both screws off. Now the top is loose. You want to disconnect the electrical fittings on there. Okay, take a Phillips screw. A regular screwdriver, and we can put it in there. We can pop those off. Yeah. The connections on the thermostat, those both come off. We want to take this connection off on the high limit. Okay, so those are loose. And then we also want to take off this white wire. Going over to the other side of the heating element, and this fitting comes out of the top of the tank, and the whole thing slips right out. Okay, at this time you can look down inside that tank, and you can see this one doesn't have any scale in it, but this would be a great time for you to to clean the scale out of the tank and de-lime the coils. What we're going to do now is we're going to move over, and I'm going to explain the parts that are attached to the lid of the tank. As you can see, there's nothing left in the tank. Everything that goes on is attached to that lid. So by removing the lid, you can get to all of the components that are located in the water tank. Okay, let me explain a little bit about the sequence of operation. The water for the hot water valve on the front of the unit comes in through this tube, runs down into this silver coil located in the bottom down here, and it comes out this tube on the top and goes out to the hot water faucet. The water for the hot water faucet on the front of the unit never touches the water inside the water tank. The water inside the water tank is just for the purpose of brewing. Okay? What we do is we hold about 2.5 or 3 decanters of water in this tank. The water, when you initiate a fill, the fill valve comes on in the back of the unit. It flows into that pan that we first removed in that first sequence, and then it runs down into this tubing here and runs into the tank. Once it runs into the tank, it displaces this hot water. Okay, the hot water it rises up. Hot water rises up through here, and it flows out this small tubing to the dispense head. It's just a simple water displacement. It's, you know, initiating that water fill valve is doing the same thing as pouring another decanter of hot water in the front of the unit. If you pour that decanter of hot water in the front of the unit, the water runs through this tube down into the bottom of the unit and forces the hot water out through here. Okay. Two of the other things we have in this tank, we have the element here. We've got the capillary tube for the thermostat. If you notice the thermostat over here, this is the adjustment screw for the thermostat over here, so you can actually turn it up or down. Never increase the water temperature above 205 degrees per your location. If you're in the mountains, you're going to have that water temperature closer to 195 degrees because you want it about 7-8 degrees below boiling. This right here is your high limit switch. A lot of times you'll have problems with the unit not running, and it's because this high limit switch has failed because it's gotten water on it. What happens over time is these fittings are made out of pure silicone, and they dry out and they crack, and when they do, they leak and they corrode this high limit and it stops working. So something I would do is first thing I would check is make sure you got continuity across your high limit when you're having heating issues. You know, if it's not heating, check across your continuity across your high limit. It might save you a headache trying to replace thermostats and elements and everything else. Okay? All right. If you want to change the capillary tube, say you got a bad thermostat for some reason. You know, something's happened, you're not sure, you want to change the capillary tube, maybe the contacts are bad in the case. You want to remove this plug. You have to drain the water out, unplug the unit. You're going to have to remove this plug. The capillary tube is going to pull out. You remove these two screws. That comes off of the mounting plate, and you take off the connections over here. Don't worry about getting these connectors mixed up. They can go on either terminal and it still operate just the way it's supposed to. Okay, I believe these were, there was a large yellow connector on the top and then two wires going to the bottom. They were both black, I believe. The element, if you want to remove the element, you remove these two nuts. You have to take it out of the tank. To remove the thermostat, you don't, but to get to the element, you got to pull this whole assembly out. Make sure you turn off the water, unplug the unit. You're going to have to drain some of the water out of the tank. I would suggest taking one of these fittings out, you know, probably this larger one, and I think I'd try and put a hose in there maybe and siphon some of the water out. You know, let it cool off before you try and siphon it with your mouth, otherwise you're going to get a big surprise. It's going to be hotter than coffee. You know, that might help speed things up a little bit. Otherwise, when you take this top gasket off, the water is right at the top, so you're going to inevitably get soaked if you do that. I think I'd be trying to get some water out of it before I did that, but be safe, don't get burned. Make sure when you replace it with the same element. The model numbers on the back of the unit. Call into, you know, your local parts center and tell them what your model number is, what your voltage is. They'll be able to identify the part you need. Okay, if you want to take these fittings out, this is the vent tube. This goes over to that pan. This tube, as you can see, this one's already cracked. This tube, it's all silicone. You want to push them in place, and likewise you want to pull them out. You want to be careful when you do that, especially when you put them in. You don't want to twist them very much, because this stainless on here, if you got a sharp edge on there, what it could do is it could cut the silicone. What I would suggest is getting it a little wet, you know, put a little water on it, and you just want to wiggle it back and forth, and it'll go right back in place. Okay, this one's the same way. You know, they're easier to get out than they are to get in. You know, if you pull them out, inspect them, make sure that they aren't cracked. This one's got a little chunk from pulling it out, but it's not cracked on the inside. You know, put a little moisture on it, and you want to try to avoid twisting. You know, I realize a lot of times when you're putting these things on, you're trying to put them on top of the tank. you know, rocking them back and forth's okay as long as you get that collar attached underneath. You know, you'll be good to go. But avoid taking them and running them around full circle trying to get them in, because it'll surely chew up that piece. Then you got a piece floating around down in the tank, and you got a bad one. You're going to have to come back. All right, let's put the insides back in the tank. What I've found is the easiest thing to do is to put the gasket back on the lid first. It seems to make it a little simpler to slide the insides back in the unit. So if you put the gasket in the lid, and you slide it back into place, everything will be ready to go. Put your crossbar in. So tighten that nut down. Make your water connection in the front of the unit. Slip your line going to your dispense back in, your head. Make this connection here. It's done, so we want to grab this pliers. Make that connection. Push your connectors back on. White goes on that side. That one goes to... Okay, what we want to do is finish putting these terminals back on the thermostat. Now that we've connected the white wire, the black wire goes back on the high limit. We want to go ahead and install the pan. So we're going to slip the pan down. We're going to shove the fill tube into here. We're going to put the other tank connection in. That slips through like that. And we're going to take and push this in like so. That one's done. This one's done. Get back on here and point the barb down so that the water runs into the pan and it doesn't spray up on the top. We slip the top on. And put the two screws in, and we're done.